auf in die nächste Geschichte.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery. But he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about.
Oh Gott, das ist kompliziert.
Then something moved. Bats. And toads.
Schneller oder? Ich muss so. Das ist echt schwer. Ich muss
And things that have not names. He knew it was all in his head. And he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself.
No, of course he's not.
But he found something more. I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery.
Keine Fische mehr.
I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused.
So fokussiert.
Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first. He told me he'd made a new friend.
Darf ich ihn streicheln? Ja, schau.
On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him. At all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor. And he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him.
Puh, schwierig.
He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis.
überall nur irgendwas mit
He
Louis.
started drifting away from our reality.
Nein. Das ist so schwer. Ach, echt?
Minneapolis. Until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on.
Ist sie noch?
In Lewisburg, he heard rumors of a
Das stimmt die Königin.
handsome queen.
Obwohl ich eigentlich auch gerne wüsste, was bei den Prinzen ist.
The queen was on her own quest for
Ich nehme die Fensterbeschlagen.
sinister serpents.
Ja.
He followed the sound of her silver harp. His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination.
Ich soll jetzt erstmal die Fische wegschauen.
But he was so proud of having created it.
Ein bisschen anstrengend. Nein, bringt mir doch nicht immer wieder neuen Fisch. Oh. Ich stelle mich, lass mich hier. Es ist so frisch.
In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
Ah, okay. Ich will hier nicht sein. Wo bin ich? Ist das Buch?
We began to forget the world we know.
Ah, das ist das Fisch.
I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker.
Ganz schön viel Fisch.
He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
Finch. Nein. Ach, schon keine Fische mehr. Also ist alles nur noch.
I still thought I could save him.
Nein! Ich will nicht hoch. Lass mich runter. Ja, fein.
even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions.
Ich will nicht. Louis.
Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on inviting him.
Welche Glückskatze?
His queen waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do.
Ich bin nicht ganz sicher, ob ich das machen möchte.
Bend down his head.
Welche Gesichter? Oh, cool.
And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
Das ist nicht gerade eine gute Geschichte.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
So. Dann fehlt eigentlich nur noch eine Geschichte, glaube ich. Ich habe keine Ahnung.
On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing.
So, ich musste mal kurz weg.
She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed.
Wie heißen diese Dinge nochmal? Ich habe keine
But I
Ahnung.
understand why we left.
Styroporkugeln oder sowas. Tot. Edith. Mom. Me? Kann das aber nicht tot heißen, wenn es auf Englisch ist. Dot?
My mom ended up leaving everything behind.
Ach, wie heißt denn diese Dinge? Diese Styroporkapseln.
What happened that night had been coming for a long time. Maybe it should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another. All that's left now is to tell you about that last night.
Die letzte Nacht. Krabbel ich? Ja, wahrscheinlich. Ja, ich krabbel. Das ist das Buch
That
vom
whole last
Anfang.
day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
To our final night together, and all our final nights apart.
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
Tschüss. Ich gehe dann mal. Boah, es ist dunkel.
the power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or that Edie had a key to it.
Schlecht musst du einfach mal in die Bibliothek. Diese Familie hat Milliarden von Büchern.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning, okay?
History of a Finch.
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out.
Welches Eddie?
It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. You know, I've seen that house every day of my life. But I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way.
Okay, ich kann doch nicht mehr zurückgehen. Ah, ich hätte mich nicht umdrehen sollen. Ich habe keine Ahnung, wo ich bin. Hallo?
I got turned around.
Konfus. Was ist denn konfus?
For a while, I wondered.
Ja, das mache ich auch gerade. Ich habe keine Ahnung, wo ich bleiben muss.
I started seeing things.
Oh, der Frosch. Nein, bleib hier. Oh, tschüss.
Things I'd forgotten had ever existed.
Welche?
But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them.
Das alte Haus. Kann ich da reingehen?
Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go! I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again.
Oh, Mom.
The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone.
Das war bestimmt im alten
After that,
Haus.
we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by.
Ui. Pusteblume.
My mom didn't like to talk about it. But she started getting sick a
Buchstabenblume.
lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone.
Hat sie eigentlich einen Freund?
The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is.
Was passiert
This journal was
dort?
supposed to be for you.
Werde ich gerade zur Welt gebracht. Ich kann das Licht sehen am Ende
But now I
des
hope you'll
Tunnels.
never see it. I just want to meet you. And tell you all these stories myself.
Okay.
But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way.
Mein Bus ist ganz schön schnell. Und ich bin tot.
This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
Jahre alt. Traurig. For Shirley Dallas. da ist das Spiel nun vorbei. Es war eine schöne Story, aber auch eine traurige. Wenn man das so im Ganzen bedenkt, dass am Ende nur noch der Sohn von ihr übrig geblieben ist. Ich würde ja gern das Ende überspringen wollen, aber ich weiß nicht ganz genau, wie das funktioniert. Deshalb schaue ich mir einfach mal mit an. Oh, die Geschichte. Was? Man kann jetzt eine Geschichte. Okay. Nein. Ich würde das. Nee, egal. Ich bedanke mich fürs Zuschauen. Ihr könnt ja gerne mal in den Kommentaren schreiben, was ich als nächstes spielen soll. Und ob ich vielleicht mal irgendwann mal ein Let's Play auf Englisch machen soll. Würde mich freuen. Man sieht sich dann beim nächsten Mal.